What if I told you that in the dusty archives of a forgotten European monastery, there exists documentation of an artifact so terrifying that the Church ordered its complete erasure from history? What if I told you that this artifact could show you the exact moment of your death, reflected in your own face? And what if I told you that some who gazed into it saw themselves already dead? Tonight, we delve into the cursed legacy of the Speculum Mortis, known in whispered legends as the mask that showed your future face. This is not just another ghost story. This is the documented account of an object that drove men to madness, toppled kingdoms, and forced the most powerful institution in medieval Europe to commit acts that would make the Inquisition look merciful. In the year 1420, Brother Augustine of the Benedictine Monastery of St. Gall wrote in his private journal words that would later be used as evidence in his trial for heresy. He wrote, "The thing that we have unearthed from beneath the altar stones is not of God's creation. It breathes without lungs, sees without eyes, and shows truths that no mortal soul should witness. Today, I looked upon my own face in its surface, and I wept, for I saw myself as I shall be in the grave. Worms crawling from my eye sockets, my flesh hanging in ribbons from my skull." Brother Augustine was found 3 days later, having clawed out his own eyes with a crucifix. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this nightmare truly began. The year was 1418. The location, a small village called Mortenhausen, in what is now southern Germany. The village had been abandoned for over 2 centuries following the Black Death. But local farmers had begun reporting strange lights emanating from the ruins of its ancient church. When Bishop Heinrich von Konstanz finally sent a team to investigate, they discovered that the church had been built atop something far older and far more sinister. Beneath the Christian altar lay a Roman temple, and beneath that, carved chambers that predated even Rome itself. In the deepest chamber, they found it. The Speculum Mortis wasn't actually a mask in the traditional sense. Contemporary accounts describe it as a sheet of what appeared to be polished black stone, roughly the size and shape of a human face, with eye holes that seemed to draw light into themselves like hungry mouths. But here's where the story takes its first truly horrifying turn. The excavation team consisted of 6 men. Within a fortnight of the discovery, 4 were dead. Not from disease, not from accident, but from what the church records carefully describe as self-inflicted wounds consistent with extreme terror and madness. The survivor, a stonemason named Klaus Werner, was found in his workshop 3 towns away, frantically carving his own tombstone. When questioned by church authorities, he could only repeat, over and over, "I saw my face in the black glass. I saw my face as it will be when the worms have finished with me. The date was carved in the stone beneath my rotting eyes." Klaus Werner died exactly 1 month later, on the precise date he had carved into his own tombstone. He was found in his bed, apparently having died of fright. His face was frozen in an expression of such absolute terror that the priest who performed his last rites subsequently left the clergy and was never seen again. The church, understandably concerned about an artifact that seemed to predict and possibly cause death, decided to study the object under controlled conditions. This was their first mistake. Their second was choosing Brother Augustine, a man known for his scholarly curiosity and his particular interest in what he called the divine mysteries hidden in earthly vessels. Brother Augustine spent 3 months studying the Speculum Mortis. His journal entries from this period make for disturbing reading. He describes the object as having a surface that was not quite solid, not quite liquid, but something that existed in a state between the two. When viewed directly, it appeared to be nothing more than polished obsidian. But when viewed peripherally, or in certain lights, it seemed to ripple like dark water. Augustine's breakthrough came when he realized that the object was not showing random visions, but was actually responding to the viewer's own life force. In his words, the cursed thing feeds upon the essence of mortality itself. It tastes death in the living soul and reflects back what it has tasted. His experiments grew increasingly dangerous. He began bringing condemned prisoners to view the object, carefully documenting their reactions. Every single subject saw their own death reflected in the surface. But more than that, they saw it with absolute, prophetic accuracy. One man saw himself hanging from a gibbet and broke free from his chains to hang himself from the monastery's bell rope. Another saw herself burning and threw herself into the kitchen fires that very night. But the most disturbing case was that of a young thief named Marcus, who had been sentenced to hang for stealing church silver. When Marcus looked into the mortis, he saw something that sent Augustine into a frenzy of note-taking. Marcus saw himself as an old man, dying peacefully in bed, surrounded by children and grandchildren. Augustine was so intrigued by this apparent contradiction that he convinced the abbot to commute Marcus's sentence to life imprisonment, just to see if the vision would prove false. Marcus lived in the monastery for the next 47 years, eventually becoming a monk himself and dying exactly as the speculum mortis had shown him. Surrounded by the young novices he had helped raise, this was when Augustine began to understand the true horror of what they had uncovered. The object wasn't just showing possible futures or playing tricks on the mind, it was showing the absolute, unchangeable truth of each person's death. And somehow, by showing this truth, it was making it inevitable. Augustine's final experiments were conducted in absolute secrecy. He began testing the object on himself, making brief glances into its surface while carefully documenting what he saw. His descriptions become increasingly frantic and illegible as the weeks pass. He writes of seeing himself as a thing of bone and shadow, with maggots spilling from my mouth as I speak the words of consecration. But the most chilling entry comes just days before his death. I understand now why the ancients buried this cursed thing so deep. It is not showing us our deaths. It is showing us what we truly are. We are all already dead. We are all already in the grave. Life is merely the dream of corpses who have not yet realized they have stopped breathing. The night brother, Augustine, clawed out his own eyes. Something else happened that the church tried desperately to cover up. The other monks reported that the walls of the monastery began to weep blood, and that every mirror and reflective surface in the building began showing, not the viewer's current face, but their face as it would appear in death. The abbot ordered the speculum mortis sealed immediately, and sent word to Rome. Pope Martin V himself issued the order that would erase the artifact from official history. But the Pope's private letters, discovered only in the 1970s, revealed the true scope of what they were dealing with. The Pope had consulted his most trusted scholars and discovered references to similar objects throughout history. The oracle at Delphi had spoken of a black mirror that shows the face of the ending. Egyptian texts mentioned a divine obsidian that reveals the Ka in its final form. Norse sagas told of a death glass that had driven entire kingdoms to madness and suicide. What the church had discovered wasn't just an isolated artifact. It was one of several similar objects scattered across the ancient world, all with the same terrible purpose. And according to the Pope's research, they were all fragments of something larger, something that had been deliberately broken apart and hidden in the deepest places of the earth. The official story was that the monastery of St. Gall had been destroyed by fire, and all records of the excavation were burned. The surviving monks were scattered to distant monasteries and forbidden to speak of what they had witnessed. The site was blessed, then cursed, then blessed again, and finally abandoned altogether. But the story doesn't end there. In 1891, during renovations of the Vatican Library, workers discovered a hidden chamber containing documents that weren't supposed to exist. Among them were detailed drawings of the speculum mortis, along with what appeared to be assembly instructions written in a script that predated all known languages. The implications were terrifying. Someone or something had created these objects, intentionally had scattered them across the world, and had left instructions for reassembling them into their original form. The Vatican immediately launched a secret investigation, sending agents across Europe to track down and destroy any remaining fragments. What they found defied explanation. In a sealed vault beneath Prague Castle, they discovered another fragment, this one in the shape of a curved mirror that showed not faces, but the exact location where each viewer would draw their final breath. In the catacombs under Paris, they found a third fragment that showed not death, but the precise moment when the viewer's soul would leave their body. Each fragment they found was guarded by the same type of documentation: warnings in dead languages, detailed accounts of madness and suicide, and always, the same desperate plea to keep the pieces separated at all costs. The Vatican's investigation was abruptly ended in 1893 when the lead investigator, Cardinal Alessandro Vannucci, sent his final report to Rome. The report consisted of a single sentence repeated over and over for 37 pages: "We found them all. God help us, we found them all." Cardinal Vannucci was found dead in his study the following morning. His face bore an expression of such profound terror that 3 different artists refused to sketch it for the death certificate. More disturbing still, every mirror in the Vatican reflected his terrified face for 3 days after his death, regardless of who was actually standing in front of them. The final entry in the Vatican's secret files on the Speculum Mortis is dated December 24, 1893. It reads simply, "The artifacts have been secured in location 7. May God forgive us for what we have learned, and may He never allow us to see it again." Location 7, according to Vatican records, doesn't exist. But here's what keeps me awake at night, and what should terrify you too. In 2008, construction workers renovating a Prague subway station broke through into a chamber that wasn't on any city planning maps. Inside, they found medieval church records and what appeared to be fragments of black stone, arranged in a careful pattern. The workers reported that the stones seemed to form the outline of a human face, and that looking at the arrangement from the right angle created an optical illusion of depth, as if you were looking into dark water. One worker, Joseph Novak, claimed that when he looked directly down at the stone fragments, he saw his own reflection looking back up at him. But it wasn't his face as it was that day. It was his face as it would be in death. Joseph Novak died in a car accident 6 months later. The accident occurred at the exact location he claimed to have seen in the stone fragments. The Prague incident was quickly covered up by a joint task force involving the Czech government and Vatican representatives. The chamber was sealed with concrete. The workers were sworn to secrecy, and the official report listed the discovery as medieval architectural fragments of no historical significance. But someone leaked photographs of the chamber before it was sealed. Those photographs circulated briefly on the internet before being systematically removed by unknown parties. I've managed to obtain copies, and I can tell you that what those workers found wasn't random stone fragments. They were themselves. The stones had been arranged in the same pattern described in the 15th century Vatican documents. More terrifying still, the photographs show scratch marks on the chamber walls, as if someone had been clawing at the stone, trying to escape. Carbon dating on the scratch marks shows they were made recently, within days of the chamber's discovery. This brings us to the question that haunts every researcher who has studied this case. If the Church succeeded in destroying or hiding all the fragments of the Speculum Mortis, why do people still encounter it? In 2011, a construction crew renovating an old hospital in Salem, Massachusetts, found what they described as a black mirror hidden behind a brick wall in the basement. 3 workers looked into it before authorities could secure the scene. All 3 saw their own deaths reflected in the surface. All 3 died within the year, exactly as they had seen. In 2015, archaeologists in Egypt uncovered what appeared to be a fragment of black obsidian carved with symbols, matching those found in the Vatican documents. The fragment was perfectly spherical, about the size of a human eye. When viewed directly, it showed nothing. When viewed in peripheral vision, it showed the viewer's face in the moment of death. The Egyptian government classified the discovery immediately, but not before 2 members of the excavation team had committed suicide, and a third had disappeared entirely. The fragment was reportedly destroyed, but similar objects have since been found in archaeological sites across the world. Each discovery follows the same pattern: initial fascination, followed by terror, followed by death or madness. And each time, authorities move quickly to classify and cover up the find. But here's the most disturbing development of all. In the age of the internet, people have begun reporting encounters with the speculum mortis that don't involve physical artifacts at all. They describe finding websites with black screens that reflect their faces when viewed in the right light. They talk about smartphone apps that seem to activate on their own, showing camera views that reflect not the present, but some terrible future. The technology changes, but the effect remains the same. Those who see their death face in the digital versions experience the same madness, the same prophetic accuracy, and the same inevitable fate as those who encountered the original artifacts. This suggests something that the medieval church may have understood, but couldn't articulate with the knowledge available to them. The speculum mortis isn't just a collection of physical objects. It's something else entirely. Something that exists in the space between perception and reality, using whatever medium is available to show humanity truths that were never meant to be seen. And if that's true, then all the efforts to hide or destroy the physical artifacts may have been pointless from the beginning. The speculum mortis isn't gone, it's evolved. It's waiting in every dark screen, every black mirror, every reflective surface that catches your eye when you're not quite looking directly at it. It's patient, this ancient thing that shows us our ending faces. It has waited centuries for us to develop the technology to carry mirrors in our pockets, to surround ourselves with screens and reflective surfaces, and now, perhaps, it no longer needs to wait at all. So tonight, when you turn off your phone, when you walk past that dark window, when you catch a glimpse of movement in your peripheral vision, remember the words of Brother Augustine: life is merely the dream of corpses who have not yet realized they have stopped breathing. And whatever you do, don't look directly into any reflective surface until you're sure you're ready to see what's looking back. Because some masks, once worn, can never be removed, and some faces, once seen, can never be forgotten. The mortis showed people their future faces. But maybe, just maybe, it was showing them something else entirely. Maybe it was showing them their true faces. The faces they wore in the space between life and death, in the moment when all illusions fall away. Maybe we're all already wearing the mask. Maybe we just haven't realized it yet. Sweet dreams.